We're going to get started in about a minute. Good morning. Morning. All right, I think we're ready to get started. I hope you found your favorite cookie or two. Let's begin with prayer. Lord Jesus, as we turn our attention today to the idea of our vocation, our calling, help us to explore what it was that led us to the calling that we are now in. Help us to understand how we are to carry out that calling. Help us also to see that there may be times when we change from one calling to another. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. So I wanted to talk a little bit about last week. There was a little feedback that I received, and it seemed like one of the things that was particularly interesting to people was the idea that we continue to migrate. And that kind of resonated with people who were kind of moving into retirement or into independent living, kind of at that phase of life where you're selling your house, where you're scaling down. And so many people found that, again, an anxious time in life. So that would be another topic we could spend more time on. Another related thing to that was the caregiver. So as people age, it often happens that one is healthier than the other. And so then when the one that's not so healthy has health issues, the burden falls on the caregiver. So that also, I think, was a topic that was raised up that could use more attention. And I think I was also pleased at the interest in the group on being open to people of different cultures and different life experiences. So I was really, really happy to see that, because so often when we're not comfortable with people of a different culture, of a different ethnic background, then we tend to kind of pull back, and we're afraid, and we don't want to engage with that person. And I think more and more we live in a pluralistic world. So I think of a community like Milwaukee. We have a Russian population. We have a significant Chinese population. We have a large Hispanic population. So we have many cultures in this city. And we have much to gain from interacting with people from all of those different places. Any other comments or questions anybody has about last week before we get into today? Oh, okay, yeah.
I wasn't able to be here last week, but I found your conversation about the subject you just brought up now, people of different cultures, so interesting. Because as many of you know, we had medical students live with us for 34 years.
Yes, right.
In rooms in our home, not in apartments. And it was, I think, the very best experience that I ever had in my life. Because everybody that came to our door, we didn't interview them, we didn't say, will you fit or not? They came, here's your room, here's a key, there's 5 rules, and now we're gonna live together. It was just tremendously eye-opening experience for me especially. And people are different from different cultures, but we're much more the same than we are different.
Yes, absolutely. So Marlene is talking about when she boarded medical students, and I agree. They come from all over the country, and at Freighter too, the medical students have the opportunity to shadow other disciplines. And so I've had several medical students that were interested in what chaplains do, and so they shadowed me, and every one of them was of a different ethnic background. And I found it very interesting to talk with them about, their background, where they grew up, their family, what made them decide to go into medicine, and you just learn so much about people. Yeah.
I also was not able to attend last week. I was out of town. But, with the immigrants, especially in our country these days, so many people are treating many, especially undocumented immigrants, in an un-Christian-like manner. And I guess I just want to add some fuel for Christians to use to kind of counteract this a little bit. One of the big things that people that treat these undocumented immigrants so poorly, one of the reasons why is because they feel they're sponging off from our country. And I think it's important to know, and just use this as a Christian to back you, to give Christian love, is that on a yearly basis, all these undocumented, not all of them, but vast majority of these undocumented immigrants, they have employee ID numbers, and they pay yearly about $100 billion in federal and state taxes, so they're not sponging overall, and that goes to pay Medicaid, Social Security. They can never draw from that. And so you could use that whenever you're seeing someone that's treating people, undocumented immigrants, poorly. Just know that these are documented facts. And for what it's worth, I know that's not probably from God, but I think it's a good supporting piece of facts to use to treat people the right way.
Thank you, Mike, for that comment that, again, they're not a drain on the system. If anything, they are paying in and they're not getting back what they are paying into the system. So, again, lots of information gets out there, and I think you and I always have to have that ability to discern how much of that is truth and how much of that is propaganda. So it's always on us, I think, to weigh everything that we hear and to judge the accuracy of what we're hearing.
I'm changing it a little bit because you talked last week about also if you were at your childhood home, or how long you lived there, if you still live there. And then I think, was it about, I can't remember what it was exactly, but I thought of, in my own situation, closing out my childhood home because I've lost both of my parents. And so to go back and close that chapter of your life is a very, you have no preparation for it. So yeah, that's all. It was.
And that is an interesting, the idea of going back to where you grew up, and now it's no longer your home, and the memories that are stirred by that. I had a similar experience. I had gone up to New Ulm to do a presentation when I was with Institutional Ministries, and so talking with the students there about doing ministry. And since I was in the neighborhood, I was only 40 miles from where I grew up, I drove out to the farm. I hadn't been out there for a long, long time. And the house was still standing, but the present owner was going to tear it down within a year or two and build something new. So I drove up on the place, and they were harvesting corn. I went and talked to them, and they said, hey, you know, take as much time as you want, look around, do whatever, you know, if you want to spook around the barn, see if it's still standing. But the house is what really spoke to me. As I stood there and looked at the house, the memories. I heard a piano playing, my mother at the piano, and, you know, playing the songs that I like to hear. And I had an image of me sitting on the Davenport listening as Mom was playing the piano. And and then I had an image of my dad coming across the yard with a pail in his hand, doing chores. And it just brought back all of what those two people did for me. So it's very nostalgic, very emotional, and also I think, you know, brings back, hey, some of the best stuff that I have, it all started there. And as a kid, I had no idea that I was being, you know, fed and developed and becoming what you become. So thank you, Stephanie, for that. All right, yeah.
Finishing on what you and Stefan both said, as the adult moves on, it's even more beyond, it goes beyond the memory, because that was your sense of belonging, and where you always felt safe, even when you came home from college, when you're always, so the memories are there, but there was a sense of belonging that was attached to that place. And now it's like, you were fortunate to move down the driveway, and see that in some cases that's not there. So it's even more that as you move into another state, there are places that are so important to you and your family that are different now. And now you have to reestablish those new, which is what you have to establish a new place that you feel you belong in that way.
So that idea too, and for Jacob also to leave the promised land, and am I going to get back? And you know, because that's where his ties were. That's where all of the important things had happened for him. And ironically, in his case, he did not live to get back. So 400 some years later, they carried his bones and reburied him in the promised land. But he did not get to see it. All right, so as we look at our job, so what do we do to prepare ourselves for the professions that we have chosen? So what's the normal course of events that we usually follow if we're going to find something to do for a living? Education, that kind of is the big thing, isn't it? You have to go to school. And do you remember your parents kind of talking about that when you were in first grade? You got to figure out this math, you know, because otherwise you're not going to get a job. So that was kind of pounded into us, I think, from the beginning.
Develop a portfolio you can show potential employers.
Okay. So along with the education is a portfolio, which is a very fancy term. And so what else besides education would make a employer want to hire us?
Apprenticeship or internship?
Yeah, okay, apprenticeship or experience. So sometimes we call that on-the-job training. So for people in the trades, for example, they all have to go through an apprenticeship. And they have to get from journeyman up to where they can actually be licensed as a plumber or as an electrician. So all of those things are involved in that. So for those who are going into the ministry, what's the apprenticeship there? The vicar year. Okay. And yeah, Nate is sitting there saying, yes, indeed. This is, excuse me, part of what we do. And for those who are teachers, they practice teach. And so St. John's has often had candidates that are spend a semester or two with us while they're doing that training there. So those two things are kind of important. So now when you think about a person like Solomon, what kind of training is he getting as a member of the court? Do you just automatically jump into the kingship? So we know a little bit about that from watching the British, don't we? Yeah, so how do the British do that? How do they prepare the princes for taking over the kingship?
Most of them serve in the military.
Okay, there's some military training. How about academics? So they all have, I think, private tutors, don't they? And so they may be learning foreign languages, and they may also be learning history, and they may also be learning protocols, what you do and what you don't do in the court, all those kind of things. So there's lots and lots of training for royalty as well. Sue, did you have your hand up?
Work to do in the, the court or whatever, but they go on tours and they start doing some of the lesser jobs.
All right, yeah. You'll see that also, that the princes or the princesses will again go out on tour, and they will do some goodwill stuff, and all of that is training also.
They shadow people who are more experienced, like other family members, so they see the behavior modeled that's expected of them.
Okay, so they also are watching what those above them are doing, and what those in positions of authority, how they are handling things. So again, you don't just automatically jump from 0 to 100 miles an hour. There's a lot of training involved. So it's really important to understand that. Now, what's interesting in the case of Solomon, in the case of the British, you only have one family. So who is the heir apparent in the family? So if the king has 4 sons, which son is going to take over? The first one. So normally you're going to go with the eldest. So as we look at the court of David, who is the logical person to take over the throne? How many sons does David have?
Probably doesn't even know.
We really don't know. Yeah. That is probably true. That because we know that David had quite a few wives, didn't he? And so he had children from many wives. And okay, then you get into that, well, who's the favorite wife and all that sort of thing. All right, so you got Solomon, whose mother was Bathsheba. And then, if you look at the first chapters of 1 King, you've got this guy by the name of Adonijah, who is another son of David. So, interesting thing happens in that first chapter of 1 Kings. We are told that David could not get warm. His circulation was failing. He was cold all the time. And so they brought in this beautiful young lady to keep him warm. And it explicitly said this was not about sex. This was just keeping David warm. So you kind of wonder, well, why did they mention that? Well, what that does is it starts to set off a vibration. So people in the court say, David is losing his virility. And now what happens? Now you have a struggle for succession. Okay, so David is on his way out. Who is going to take over? And so Adonijah, gets together with some of his people and says, I'm going to take over. And he basically is gathering his forces, he's getting it all together. And then Bathsheba and Nathan the prophet hear about what's going on, and they're saying, no, no, Solomon is supposed to be the one that takes over. And so they go to David, and they say, you may not be aware of this, and he wasn't. Adonijah is plotting to take over. And now you promise that Solomon will be king. And so David declares Solomon as king, and Adonijah is like, oh. And so it's very fascinating. When you don't have a clear line of succession, what you're going to end up with is these power struggles that are going on. So through all of that, Solomon is anointed and declared the king, and now he is in command. So now in chapter 3 of 1 Kings, I wanted to take a look at what Solomon has to say at this point in time. So it starts out where he made an alliance with Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and married his daughter. He brought her to the city of David, and he finished building his palace and the temple of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. So notice he's also making political alliances. So this was kind of a common thing, that if you married the daughter of one of the surrounding powers, then you weren't going to have any problems with them. They were going to be on your side. Okay, so let's go down to, I got in the wrong column there. A little trouble with my eyes here too. I'm still not reading as well with the cataracts as I can see at a distance. So Solomon showed his love for the Lord by walking according to the statutes of his father David, except that he offered sacrifices and burned incense on the high places. So the king went to Gibeon to offer sacrifices, for that was the most important high place, and Solomon offered 1,000 burnt offerings on that altar. At Gibeon, the Lord appeared to Solomon during the night in a dream, and God said, ask for whatever you want me to give you. So think again now how he is beginning his reign, and what is it, as he begins his new job, what is it that he wants? And Solomon said, you have shown great kindness to your servant, my father David, because he was faithful to you and righteous and upright in heart. You have continued this great kindness to him and had given him a son to sit on his throne this very day. Now, O Lord my God, you have made your servant king in place of my father David, but I am only a little child and do not know how to carry out my duties. So I want you to think about that statement there. I am only a little child and don't know how to carry out my responsibilities. What attitude is he expressing there? Humility. So I really want to stress this one as we enter into our calling, the importance of humility. So what if you've gone to college and you've got your degree, and maybe you've got a postgraduate degree, and I mean, you are just so smart. And so you come into your job, and are you humble or are you arrogant? And I think you and I have seen both of those things, haven't we? So when someone comes in with that arrogance, why is that a problem in terms of them doing a good job?
They know everything.
They know everything. And so if they know everything, then you as the employer, what can you do? You can't teach them, can you? So what's the reality? How much do they really know? They may be very smart, but what don't they know as they start their employment with you. Yeah, again, that life experience. So I think from my own point of reference, as I came out of the seminary, 12 years studying the Bible, and man, we knew the Bible, we knew the history, we knew the languages. So we were smart, in terms of that. And probably very few people in our parishes had that level of education. So we could tell them a lot about the Bible. But what didn't we know about them? Yeah. We didn't know what was going on with them. So they're sitting there in the pew. They got the tie and the shirt. They look all buttoned up, look like everything is fine. Nails are polished. It's all good. But what we don't know is what's their daily life like? What's the ordinary day? So if they're farmers, and if you look out what's going on there now, if you look at the crops, some of the crops have come up and some haven't. So everything is just very, very scattered there. There's no rain. If you don't get rain, the seeds that haven't germinated aren't going to. So that farmer can't help but look at that. And he starts to worry. He starts to think about all the money he's got invested in putting that crop in the ground. And if this continues and we don't get rain and the crop doesn't grow, he's not going to get much of a harvest. How is he going to pay that loan? Woo, he's going down that rabbit hole. And he's sitting there on Sunday morning and he's just looking very calm. But in his gut, he's having acid reflux big time. How would you find that out, that he's dealing with a lot of pressure and anxiety?
By listening.
Yeah, you go out to the farm. You sit down with him over a cup of coffee. You ask him to kind of explain. And I remember one of our pastors was new out of the seminary, and he didn't know anything about farming. And so, the farmers are just kind of like, looking at him like, oh, you rookie. But, then he did that. He went out, and he learned, and he asked questions. So that's where that humility is really a wonderful, wonderful thing. So I think, for all of us, I think back in my own experience also. In my second parish, we had so many people that had not been in church for years. So we had what we call inactive members. And so I was looking at that and thinking, man, we got a couple hundred people here. And how are we going to, make contact with all of those people? And so I thought, well, okay, we'll send a letter. And so that's what we did, and it just caused a real firestorm. Because the letter was, pretty direct. You haven't been active. We're assuming that maybe you're not interested, and if this is the case, we probably will drop you from membership. So it created quite a firestorm. And I think one of the best things for me were the wise people I had on my church council who said, Reverend, maybe we should backtrack a little bit here. And, maybe we should make more of an effort to have direct face-to-face contact with these folks. So I think that was one time where I needed some humility. And, these leaders were, they didn't jump all over me, but they were very kind, and yet they also helped to open my eyes to say, Reverend, let's do this in a more compassionate way. Let's do this in a more direct way. So it's one of those things where as you look, you say, if I went back, if I had a do-over, I would approach that differently. And I think every one of us who is a veteran in the workforce, we can look back, can't we, at times when we had lessons to learn. And sometimes we learned them painfully, but hopefully we learned those lessons. Anything else that you want to say about humility? So, yeah, go ahead.
Sometimes humility comes and goes.
Yeah, well, that's true. It comes and goes, yeah.
Lose it for a while, it's pretty embarrassing. Hopefully you learn a lesson from it.
Well, that's kind of interesting. Humility comes and goes. And what makes it go, do you think?
Right.
Yeah. So let's say, and I think you see that with Solomon also. He starts out very well because of that humility. And the further he gets into his reign, the more he gets into the arrogance. And so at the end of Solomon's reign, it's a very different story in terms of him being open and, again, being humble. He kind of lost that. So I think life is a teacher. And when we say, okay, now I'm a veteran, okay, I've been out for 10 years and I know what's going on, and nobody can tell me anything, that's a dangerous time. What we have to hope is that we have a good friend, or we have a spouse, or a colleague who will just kind of say, hey, I just want you to kind of take a look at this.
In many cases, it's the difference between knowledge and wisdom.
Yeah.
These people come with all the knowledge, but no wisdom, and if they are very conceited, they are not going to learn much from wisdom.
Yeah.
Whereas people who are humble and don't have all that knowledge absorb that wisdom more quickly.
Yeah. And I like the fact that you say knowledge and wisdom, because they are two different things, aren't they? And again, I think the wisdom is the life experience, and the knowledge is the head stuff. So very, very important to have that distinction in our mind. Anything else on that humility thing? But that was one of the first Beatitudes, wasn't it? Blessed are the poor in spirit. So that's where Jesus is saying, blessed are those who are broken. Blessed are those who say, I don't know anything. Blessed are those who say, I have no clue what to do here. He said, that's a great blessing. And, normally we hate that, don't you? I just hate that when I'm just like, I don't know what to do with this thing here. And God says, that's good. Now we can do something. Okay, I want to go on from his saying that he was a child. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, a great people, too numerous to count or number. So give your servant a discerning heart to govern your people and to distinguish between right and wrong. For who is able to govern this great people of yours? So now, what is he asking for here?
A discerning heart.
A discerning heart. Okay. And again, he says a discerning heart is to know what is right and what is wrong. Again, I want you to think about his focus here. So when you become king and you got the crown and you got all the stuff that goes with that, again, what is it that's so attractive about all of that? Power, yeah. As a kid, to get in the seat of the tractor and rev that baby up, power, oh man. Hey, I can turn dirt with this baby. I can do all kinds of things. So power is always in the equation. Whatever it is that people decide to do, They're looking at how much does it pay, what are the perks, and again, how many people are going to be under me, and all of those. So that's all about power, isn't it? So it's so interesting to me that Solomon does not go there. That he doesn't say, I want all the power. I want to be able to control anything and everything. From the littlest peon in the kingdom to the highest, they all are going to be under my thumb, and they're going to do what I want whenever I snap my fingers. Little kids love that, don't they? That's why they throw those tantrums, because they want to see if you will dance to their tune. And when you're at Pick and Save, and you don't want to cause a scene, you're sometimes saying, okay, fine, here's the ice cream, shut up. But that is in us, that desire for power. Goes all the way back to the garden, doesn't it? You will know all things. And Eve and Adam were like, ooh, wow, yeah, the power. So Solomon wisely says, I don't want that. For a young guy, that is pretty impressive, isn't it? That he has the wisdom to say, I want to be useful. I want to be helpful. I've got all these people with all these problems, and they're going to come to the king's court, and they're going to be asking for decisions, settling disputes. And later on, you're going to see some of those stories with Solomon. The most famous one were the two women that claimed the same child. Remember that story? And so Solomon's like, okay, which one is really the mother? Which one really loves this child? Do you remember how he solved that one? Yeah, he said, all right, well, cut the child in half. And each one will have half of a child. What did the real mother say? No, you're not going to kill my child. I'll give up my child to the other woman before I'll let that happen. And then Solomon says, okay, now I know who the real mother is. But again, that kind of wisdom to be able to settle disputes, to discern, to know what is going on in the lives of people, that what they tell you isn't always the whole story, all of those kind of things. So that's what he asked for. And then what does God say? The Lord was pleased that Solomon had asked for this. So God said to him, since you've asked for this, and not for long life or wealth for yourself, nor have asked for the death of your enemies, but for discernment in administering justice, I will do what you've asked. I will give you a wise and discerning heart, so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. Moreover, I will give you what you have not asked for. So he says, you are going to have riches. But again, that's just extra. You don't need that. How many of you have had that experience, that when you focused on serving others in your job and taking care of people, that you were blessed in all kinds of other ways? I've certainly found the ministry to be that. That if you are a servant to people, again, they will love you for taking care of them, for guiding them, for teaching them. So we never got a huge salary, but we had farmers. And one would always bring a duck at Thanksgiving, or a goose. And, again, another one would bring a turkey, would bring butter. It was just, and so that was how they blessed us in other ways as well. How they took care of our kids. Is there a hand anywhere? Okay. So we've talked about what Solomon did to prepare himself, you know, the training and so on that he had gone through. So he was as ready as he could be. And I remember back at an Ascension, Professor Otto talked about call day and how, again, the anticipation of the vicars and the graduates, and then also the apprehension. And it just really took me back down memory lane, because that really is what we all go through, isn't it? When you do your training, you go through college, you go out and you interview, you get that first job. I see it at Froedtert with our new nurses that come on staff. They are, you know, very well trained, they know their stuff, and yet they don't know anything. And so they're apprehensive, aren't they? And that's okay. Because if you're apprehensive, what will you do? You're willing to learn. You are going to ask questions. And what I like at Froedtert is that all of the new hires are under the supervision of an experienced nurse. And they follow that nurse around for a couple of weeks probably. And every time they hang an IV and so on, the experienced nurse is watching what they're doing, making sure that they're doing everything correctly. And so they got that backup. And you know, again, if they make a mistake, someone is there. It's not going to lead to anything harmful. It's just a very, very good system. So I think too, for people who are going into the job market, if you have that kind of orientation, it's a very, very wonderful way to get your feet wet. Any other thoughts that you have about that process of as you get into that? Yeah.
Really important for anybody, especially a person entering the workforce, is to have some experience with people skills. And by that, it's kind of a general term, but good listener, doesn't always interrupt other people, speak up when they don't really know what's going on, and doesn't prejudge people, let them have the opportunity to show you what kind of person they are, because that can really get you off on a very good foot or a wrong foot.
All right, so Yvonne is talking about people skills. And, you know, again, for someone new in the job market, they don't have that, do they? They just have not had the opportunity to really interact with what they're doing, so they don't have that experience. And so again, to be open and humble and willing to take that in. I think people skills are worse than they've ever been. I just noticed that at the supermarket. I come to the checkout and she's on her phone. I hate to bother you, but could you check me out? I almost feel like I have to apologize for her having to take time out to take care of me. So the people skills in those kind of situations, I'll ask some, you know, where do you find this? What aisle is that in? I don't know. And they walk off, and it's like, oh, okay, there's another good people skill.
Right, be a good listener. You have to be able to listen, absorb what's being told, and then use it in practice. And some people have a hard time with that. They just don't listen.
People just don't listen. Why is that? That's kind of a curious thing to me. How come people find it hard to listen?
Because they're busy deciding what they're gonna say back to you,
Yeah, yeah. So sometimes it's a defensive kind of a thing. The fact that you're trying to tell them something means that they need to learn, and they really don't want to accept that because they thought that they had this all under control. So it's kind of a humbling thing, and they're not comfortable with it. So it can be partly that, and I don't know.
Going along with being people skills, you have to learn pretty quickly that a lot of your coworkers may not have the best intentions a lot of the time, and will absolutely stick you with blame for whatever they do wrong, or try to get money out of you or other such things.
Okay. So there's a little people wisdom involved there too, isn't there, Isaac? That the motives of your fellow workers. And I know sometimes too where people are not trying to do their best. They are trying to get by. And so if you come and do your level best and they're trying to get by, that makes them look bad. And they're not going to appreciate that, so then they're going to say, hey, come on, you stop putting in that extra effort. Loaf like the rest of us. Bring down the quality of the workforce here. So that is another thing that's going on there.
Is everyone's just in a hurry. Everything's in a hurry to get, I want to read this email, I want to read half the email, move on, they want to do this, they just want to like move on to the next thing and just keep going. They don't focus on what's in front of them. They just, hey, go to the next person. And that's it, they're just in a hurry to do everything.
Yeah, and it has become kind of a processing of how many, and at Freighter too, the doctors are encouraged to see so many patients in such an amount of time. So when you're looking at making money, that also influences how you deal with people. And we've also gotten to this thing where if you want customer service, you get a recording. And we're all thrilled about that as well. And you have to go through 5 different screens in order to actually get a real person. And I have to admit, I really lose my cool on those kind of things. And I start jabbing the button on the phone. And, yeah.
Sometimes I hear our grandkids say, well, I got 5 minutes before I have to get to work, and they have to get this and this done. And if they're a little late, it's okay because they're thinking, I have to do what I want to do rather than what I'm required to do.
So that I think is very interesting also, where, again, they give themselves a lot of grace. It's approximately, I may get to it, I'll see where I can squeeze that in instead of the responsibility. So we're really looking at generational differences also, aren't we? I think of the way my parents raised me, to be polite, to be conscious of what's going on with the other person. And now it's kind of flipped where it's about me. And so if you get in my way and I got this job to do, I'm going to diss you and I'm going to, take care of me. So there's all of that kind of stuff going on out there. Sue and then Becky.
I was just gonna say, this time thing is really important because, like all skills, you have to practice them in order to develop them. So if you want to be a good listener, you have to practice that. If you want to be, someone who's empathetic, you have to practice that. And if you're not in an environment where they allow you to do that, if you don't have the time, like you say, doctors being forced to see people for only 5 minutes at a time, or if you are, in that kind of a job situation or a school situation where everything is like, on the dot clock, it's hard for people to practice that. So we have to think about ways where we can have people have the time to practice those things, but we also have to encourage people to connect with real people and not phones and the internet and things like that, but that they actually talk to friends and family and learn their communication skills that way.
Yeah, so again, the idea. The listening skills, it does take effort. And I think of that, that's my job, is to listen. And sometimes it's like, where are we going here? Is there a point? I'm not quite sure what's all, because you have to kind of sift through sometimes some of the words that are coming at you. So that requires a lot of practice and a lot of patience. Becky, what were you going to add?
Sue's comment that nicely for my comment, which is the flip side of this coin is mentorship. So, there's a lot of opportunities for people to be a mentor of new incoming employees or new people in their environment, giving a little room for grace while holding expectations, but knowing that a new graduate coming into your work environment, they can't possibly know the things that you know at
Yeah.
work environment. So having that really good onboarding and room for grace to teach them the things that they need, because there's just certain things they're never going to learn in school,
Yeah, yeah,
regardless of the technology.
yeah.
And sometimes it is the social skills, like, you grew up during COVID. Okay, well, now we need, learn some new ways to deal with people and how to interact with people of authority around you. Yeah. So I like to think of mentorship. So.
That's another whole thing.
Yeah.
That you have learned that skill, and how do I, in a kind and a loving way, help this person to grow? And that can be a real back and forth thing, that's for sure.
Personally, I think that a lot of young people do not have the people skills that they need because we've got the screen generation. And they took all the textbooks away and they're all working behind screens. And all of the SAT, ACT, achievement tests have all gone down because these people are just in their own little world. They don't develop these skills that they should as they're going through school. And it's amazing too that so many of the young people are so lonely, and I think that again speaks to that same thing. Because it's lonely talking to a machine. Or touching keys on a machine. You need to interact with people, and you need to have classroom discussion that's around books.
Yeah, so that, I think, is an issue that we all see, is again, the technology and the screens and how kids are drawn into that from a, yeah, AI is very scary for us. So I think the challenge for us as people who did not grow up with that, who have these life skills, how do we get beyond that screen with that young person? How do we form a connection with that young person? So I think about that in terms of my grandson, who is now halfway through college. And so he's in that generation. But he is a people person. And he does like to spend time with Grandpa. And so I really treasure that okay, let's go to Culver's, let's go for a hike, let's just hang out somewhere, let's just talk about things. And then I can get into his mind and understand where he's coming from. And he does have a lot of fears about the future of the world and what is there going to be there for him. And so I want to know that, and I want to be able to assure him the world has always been kind of scary. But God is still working. He's still using people like you, and so let's look at what you got going here. So I think it's very important that we not just get angry at the checkout lady, but that we maybe also say, hey, how's it going? And see if she wants to chat a little bit and find out who she is as a person. Lois?
It's like screens and technology is not going away, and sometimes we want to maybe look for ways to interact with younger people, even if it involves screens. Like, I have an 8-year-old granddaughter, and they were over at our house, and I asked if she wanted to play cards. No.
Yeah.
And she had her own little screen that she would use to take videos of things. So I sat down with her and we watched some videos that she had made, you know, and laughed at them together, and I asked her to take another video, and so kind of got involved that way, in a creative way, and you know, so we didn't play cards, but we still interacted.
Yeah, yeah. So, thank you for that, Lois, because, you know, you could say, well, you need to learn how to play cards, and you throw that thing in the basket, and, you know, and that probably wouldn't have gone well. So you went with that, and you connected with her on that, and then over time, she will say, you know, Grandma's really interesting. I like being with her. I wonder what else she wants to show me. You know, and then you start getting that back and forth. So I'm really hoping that all of us can do that with this present generation that we have so many fears for and concerns about, because you know, they're part of our families, they're part of our social structure. If we can do something for them, if we can get that connection going with them, then I think we can do some really, really good work there. Well, I really like all the discussion that we've got here. And that's what's always interesting. I don't know what's going to come up. But this whole idea of how do we find our calling, and how do we carry out our calling in the way that God wants us to. That's something that needs a lot of exploration with the present generation coming up. And in our own generation, we don't always carry the same profession. How many of you have changed professions in your work life? Okay, so quite a number of you have. And I switched from parish pastor to chaplain, so major career change there also. And then retirement is another area where people change professions, and they may enter into something they've never done before. And that can be very interesting too. The thing is, you and I don't know what all our talents are. So a lot of us have hidden talents that have never been developed, never been discovered. And maybe in retirement you find it. And it's like, whoa, all right. And then you become a musician and you write a concerto.
As we talked today about, you know, starting your first job or changing your job, I actually take it a step further, and I think that as you change into different life experiences, it's like starting a new job each time. So as we, you know, work to caregive for our elderly parents, it's like we're starting a new job.
Yeah.
And we have to like sit back and learn that job.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Sammy, that again, as new experiences come into our life, such as, again, the care of elderly parents, now you are put into, okay, how do I be a caregiver, and what skills do I need to learn? And a lot of it's going to revolve on insurances and you know, doctors and medications and all those kind of things. So that's where we continue to find out about ourselves and who we are. Marlene.
I think it's important to have patience, because a lot of words we hear and take in from others, and a lot of words we share with others don't get absorbed right away, but they stay put for, and maybe 5 years, when the right time comes, that information is recalled. And, oh yeah, I remember they talked about that. Yeah. And so it kind of builds a reservoir of hidden suggestions for somebody, which perhaps may be tapped in later in their life.
So Marlene, talking about patience, and what we say may finally take root 10 years from now. And I really believe that it really is farming. You plant those seeds, and then you don't worry about whether it's going to germinate today.
Well, and I can say that because I experienced that. I think of my aunt, who I loved and spent a lot of time with, and sometimes she would say something to me, and years later, I think of those conversations.
Yeah.
And I realize how they have influenced me, and I'm grateful for them.
Yeah. I heard nothing my father said to me when I was 18. And it all came back to me at 25. So, he didn't waste his breath. It just took a while. And I had to learn, I had to grow, I had to become wiser. And then it was like, yeah, there it is. And the best thing about my dad is he didn't repeat himself. Because, there are people who, I told you, and I'm telling you again, and, that we always think that repetition is going to get through. But say it once, say it well, and then wait. Yeah. Yeah. There's just no substitute for life experience, is there? And so, as a new pastor just out of the seminary, I wish I would have had some life experience, but I didn't. And so I still thank God for those people that were kind to me and forgiving. And now if I could go back, it would be different. But you can't do that. You got to start somewhere, don't you? So again, we hope with Solomon that we have that wisdom. I am but a child. Lord, I know some stuff, but there's more that I don't know. And then we're going to be okay. Then God can show us lots of things. Thank you all for your input today. Next week, we're going to talk about marriage.